What's up, guys? This is a follow-up video of Spatial Disorientation Part 2. I just didn't want to add too much information in one video, so I decided to break it down into two. How do muscles and joints mislead the pilot during spatial disorientation? Giving you one scenario here: flying through clouds, false pitch sensations. Let's take a look at how false pitch sensations look. Reducing power makes you feel like you're pitching down, and increasing power makes you feel like you're pitching up, even if altitude is unchanged. So, if we're flying through clouds, what we're going to be seeing in front of us is just white and gray, the color of the cloud, right? So, we pretty much lose any visual references or cues that we could use to know if we're actually pitching up or down. The most important one is using the horizon, right? If our nose is above the horizon, that means that we're pitching up. And if our nose is below the horizon, we can tell that we're pitching down. And well, obviously, flying outside of clouds is easier to tell this, right? However, when you find yourself in this situation, flying through clouds, that's when spatial disorientation occurs. Why? Because all those visual cues are pretty much gone. So, answering this question, how do muscles and joints mislead pilot during spatial disorientation? Well, this is just one example. When flying through clouds and when pretty much experiencing this false pitch sensation. Now, let's take a look at how does the inner ear mislead the pilot during spatial disorientation? Again, the same scenario. We are flying through clouds. The leans. The leans. You slowly enter a bank without noticing. When you level the wings, your inner ear says you're banking the other way. So, the same thing as this first example. When we are flying outside the clouds, it is easier to spot mistakes that we're doing. However, when flying through clouds, well, you're just pretty much looking at white and gray in front of you because of the color of the clouds. So, with this being said, what's the solution to spatial disorientation? Simple. Solution: trust the instruments. Trust the instruments. Why? Because the instruments know exactly what's going on with the aircraft. And well, one is pretty much confused at this point, which is the definition of spatial disorientation. Part of it, you feel confusion, right? So the instruments know exactly what's going on with the airplane, and therefore it is important for us to rely on the instruments in this situation. Why? Simple. You cannot see outside. So outside of the clouds, use your instruments, look outside. But when we're flying through clouds, it is important to trust the instruments. If you feel like you're pitching down or if you feel like you're pitching up, look at your attitude indicator. It is going to tell you whether you're pitching up or you're pitching down. So, solution: trust the instruments.